This is Arkies in the Beltway, your look at national politics and the Arkansans influencing the discussions. I'm Alex Thomas, Washington correspondent for the Arkansas Democrat-Gazette, reporting from the nation's capital. Thank you for joining us for this edition of Arkies in the Beltway for the week of June 22nd, 2025. We start with U.S. military strikes in Iran, the United States joining Israel in targeting nuclear facilities. House Intelligence Committee Chair Rick Crawford says he was in touch with the White House before the strikes and will continue to track developments in the coming days. Crawford of Jonesboro applauding the strike, saying Iran brought the world to this point. Senate Intelligence Committee Chair Tom Cotton approving the president's decision as well. He says Iran's leaders should take warning and not target Americans in retaliation. The reaction not universal among lawmakers. Connecticut Representative Jim Himes, the top Democrat on the House Intelligence Committee, says a military strike without congressional approval is a clear violation of the Constitution. A snag in Senate Republicans' efforts to pass legislation advancing their policy goals. The Senate parliamentarian ruled some provisions in the reconciliation effort violate the body's rules on legislation affecting spending and revenues. This includes language from one member of the Arkansas congressional delegation. The Senate Agriculture, Nutrition, and Forestry Committee, under the leadership of Arkansas Republican John Bozeman, put forward several changes to SNAP and agriculture programs. Both matters fall under the committee's jurisdiction. SNAP is the nation's largest nutrition assistance program with 42 million participants, including more than 241,000 Arkansans. Farmers, meanwhile, have been pushing Congress for years to update farm safety net programs as operations continue to face inflation, high input cost, and low prices. Senate Republicans hope to advance President Donald Trump's agenda through a sweeping package, the vehicle of choice, reconciliation, which allows the Senate to approve measures affecting spending and revenues with a simple majority, rather than the typical 60 votes necessary for advancing legislation. The Senate trying to catch up to the House, which passed its legislative package last month. The Senate parliamentarian ruling parts of Bozeman's proposal are not budgetary matters, but rather policy matters. One such provision, Senate and House Republicans push language mandating states cover a portion of SNAP food benefit cost. The federal government currently covers these expenses. A state's cost share would change depending on its payment error rate, which reflects overpayments and underpayments to SNAP participants. Arkansas would face a 10% rate under the Senate proposal compared to a 20% match under the House bill. Katie Berg with the Center on Budget and Policy Priorities says such a move would be an unprecedented change to SNAP.
States are really not in a position to absorb these costs in good times, much less if the economy weakens.
Laura Kelm serves as the Northwest Arkansas Director of Arkansas Advocates for Children and Families. She expressed relief about the Senate parliamentarians' determination.
States, especially states like Arkansas, really don't have the capacity to take on the cost that's involved in a huge cost share like the bill calls for.
The Senate parliamentarian additionally ruled against a provision affecting people eligible to participate in SNAP. The Senate proposal and House bill limit the program to American citizens and people lawfully allowed to live in the United States. Arkansas's Marshallese population would qualify for SNAP under both plans. Berg says the change would result in refugees and people granted asylum being unable to access SNAP benefits.
When we're talking about the restrictions on SNAP eligibility for immigrants in these proposals, we are talking about people who are here legally, who are fleeing violence and persecution and seeking refuge in the United States, and who have been extensively vetted by the U.S. government in order to be granted that humanitarian relief. These proposals are taking food away from them and making it harder for them to build their lives here.
The Senate parliamentarian did not rule against changes to SNAP's work requirements for able-bodied adults. The Senate text and House bill increased the maximum age for meeting work requirements from 54 to 64. The Senate GOP plan exempts parents with children younger than 10, while the House legislation would exempt those with children younger than 7. Bozeman said Saturday, in light of the parliamentarian's ruling, his committee will continue examining its possible options to meet the Senate's rules. Congressional Republicans still hope to use reconciliation to deliver the first major change to agriculture programs in 7 years. The Senate and House were supposed to pass a new farm bill in 2023, updating agriculture, rural development, and nutrition programs. Lawmakers, however, have struggled to reach common ground, resulting in Congress extending the 2018 law through this September. Heath Donner is a fifth-generation farmer from the Mississippi County city of Manila. He helps manage his family's 3,300-acre operation, prioritizing peanuts, cotton, corn, and soybeans. He says farmers need long-term relief.
You've got a lot of guys that's struggling. We've chewed into equity that we've had, that we've built up over generations, and you're looking at that equity just going away.
The Senate plan and House bill call for increasing reference prices for agriculture programs, as well as premium changes to make crop insurance more affordable. Hunter Byram with the University of Arkansas Cooperative Extension Service says both proposals are very encouraging when it comes to agriculture and protecting rural economies.
We're not just talking about just a farmer. We're talking about people that are in these economies, and they drive these economies.
The Senate parliamentarian did rule against a provision suspending permanent price support for commodities, something Congress usually does in its farm bill to establish new levels meeting current agriculture needs. There is an issue for farmers if Congress approves the agricultural language. They wouldn't start receiving new payments until the new year. Donner says when Congress debates a new farm bill later this year, they may need to consider economic relief.
This is all good long-term stuff. We may need some help short-term.
Congress approved $31 billion in agriculture assistance in December, $10 billion of which were considered economic aid. 3 members of Arkansas's congressional delegation continue their push to protect the Pine Bluff Arsenal. Senator Bozeman, Senator Tom Cotton, and Representative Bruce Westerman have been raising concerns about the arsenal's future as the Army implements its transformation initiative. Defense Secretary Pete Hegseth issued a memo in April suggesting the option of consolidating operations as well as pursuing leasing opportunities with the private sector. Bozeman during a Senate Appropriations Subcommittee hearing last Wednesday.
Current events have made one thing clear: the commercial industrial base alone cannot meet our munitions demands.
The Pine Bluff Arsenal in Jefferson County consists of more than 660 buildings across 13,500 acres. It is the only installation in North America able to fill white phosphorus munitions, which are capable of producing smoke. Westerman says he's unsure about the origins of the plans to shift work away from the arsenal.
The Army should be looking at how they move more operations into the Pine Bluff Arsenal rather than taking operations from the Pine Bluff Arsenal.
The Hot Springs congressman invited Army officials to tour the Pine Bluff Arsenal last week in hopes of showing the installation's importance. Westerman telling the Democrat-Gazette the Pine Bluff Arsenal provides a unique contribution to the nation's weapons supplies, given its production of white phosphorus munitions.
It'd be very difficult and very expensive to move some of those operations to another facility, not to mention how long it would possibly take to get a permit to do work with stuff like white phosphorus.
Back on Capitol Hill, Bozeman and Cotton pressed military officials about the importance of the Army's organic industrial base. As previously referenced, Bozeman talked about it during a Senate Appropriations Subcommittee hearing. Army Secretary Dan Driscoll and Air Force General Randy George, the chair of the Joint Chiefs of Staff, appeared before Senate appropriators. That same day, with Hegseth before the Senate Armed Services Committee, Cotton of Little Rock brought up the military's own network of facilities.
Private industry is very important, but you have your own organic industrial base. Ammunition plants, arsenals, depots, that's included in everything, right? That we need to look at every possible source to address every potential choke point in our munition supply chain.
Every possible source.
It's not clear when the Army will make a decision about the Pine Bluff Arsenal and its future. Westerman says he's focused on educating military leaders about the installation's importance. Senator Khan also applauding Hegseth for restoring the names of several Army bases. The Trump administration has moved to restore these names, which the Biden administration had changed because of connections to the Confederacy. The new names do not recognize Confederate leaders, but rather other military personnel who shared the same last name. Cotton says Hegseth made the right call.
To be honest with you, I think most soldiers serving those bases didn't even know who they were named after. They just had fond recollections for decades of their time at Fort Benning or Fort Bragg or other places.
Virginia Democrat Tim Kaine says Hegseth made a mistake, not because of the new people being honored, but rather, Kaine says, because the Biden administration had moved to honor other individuals in getting away from Confederate leaders.
You didn't call any of the families, and I've spoken with the families, and the families were called by the press. That's how they learned about this.
Congress passed legislation at the end of Trump's first presidency with language seeking to remove names from defense facilities, honoring those associated with the Confederacy. The Senate and House had to override Trump's veto. The president rejected the legislation in part because of this language. And that'll do it for this edition of Arkies in the Beltway for the week of June 22nd, 2025. You can stay up to date with all news involving Arkansas at arkansasonline.com. Special thanks, as always, to the team down in Little Rock. I'm Alex Thomas, and this has been Arkies in the Beltway. Thanks for listening.